What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome to my Platinum Trophy review series. Now, what is this series for you newcomers? It's a series where I look at games and I give you a review of them, but I also give you a review of my experience of earning the Platinum Trophy, fully completing the game. And that's what makes this review different to other reviews out there. A lot of reviewers only spend, 10-20 hours with the game, which can only be sometimes 50% of the actual time required to fully complete the game. So I complete the game fully, and that way you know that I've really put a lot of time into this game and I know pretty much I've experienced everything that this game has to offer. Now today we're going to be talking about Robinson the Journey. The reason why I chose this game is because when the PlayStation 5 comes out, which is coming out very soon, in less than a month at the time of making this video, only 10 games are not going to be compatible from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5. And one of them is Robinson the Journey, a VR game made by Crytek in 2016. It was pretty much one of the path runners for the PlayStation VR. It was one of the first games that came out. So we're going to have a little bit of a look over this game and talk about the review firstly, and then we'll move on to the Platinum Trophies. So I'm going to review the game firstly, talk about the things I loved about the game, because there is a lot of things I loved about this game, and a few limitations, shall I say. I feel like this review is going to be mostly positive. There's some good things to say about this game. There is a few hit and miss parts of the game, which I feel like it was just limited by its time and it didn't want to take those extra steps for the VR. Full transparency, guys, because I always think it's so important to understand the context of the reviewer. I don't play loads of VR, I've only played maybe 2 or 3 VR games this year. I played a lot more last year, but this year I've only played a few. So because of that, I can't really review it against other VR games because I haven't played loads of them. I love my VR, just there hasn't been the games that have really appealed to me. Enough being said, let's crack on with talking about Robinson the Journey. So you take control of Robin and you are a young boy who's been abandoned on this new planet that was going to be explored by the human race. You are left alone with a Higgs robot, which is a futuristic hovering drone that sort of guides you throughout your journey. And you're also accompanied by your really cute baby T-Rex called Laika, who is just so adorable and really fun to play with and have all this just random fun times with, and she sort of moves the story forward as well. So the story's pretty simple. It's a VR game, you play it from a first person perspective and you're basically just recovering Higgs units, which give you more details as to how you became to be potentially the only human abandoned on this planet after a big crash, after the massive mothership crashes on this planet. The planet is sort of like a Earth from a million years ago, all you can see is dinosaurs. The environment is so luscious, the game looks beautiful, I have to say. For being a 2016 VR game, it probably would have been one of the best looking VR games of its time. VR games are all about immersion. They are, because you play from first person's perspective, and this game is immersive. I have to say I really enjoyed making my way through the lands. Everything was just so luscious and so beautiful. Really props to them for making such a gorgeous landscape. This brings me on to the gameplay. I didn't have loads to say in relation to graphics because, what more do you need to hear other than the fact that it looks beautiful. The gameplay consists of just a few elements. It's a first-person walking sim pretty much. It just consists of exploring, levitating a few items, and some climbing sections, and a very few energy-based puzzle sections which you do as Higgs. And you navigate the controls by using a PlayStation DualShock controller. This is going to be my first con of the game, and in this review is the fact that a lot of games back in 2016 and even now are so much better using the motion controllers that I feel like they've really missed an ability to have 2 free hands here. Instead, you just basically only operate one hand, and it's a bit finicky, it's a bit difficult to use, especially when you're doing the climbing sections. And that is probably another critique of the game, is you do a lot of climbing in this game, and the climbing, although it's kind of fun to start with, it becomes a bit stale when you spend, half an hour out of a 2-hour section climbing. And as well, because I faced quite a lot of glitches in this game, I have to say. The camera was all over the place, my character would keep jumping from bit to bit, and I found the climbing sections were the biggest area which showed a lot of the glitches. It was almost like they hadn't tested it enough, because you basically be standing still and you'll be moving in and out and getting stuck in between walls and things, and it was difficult to say. It wasn't that enjoyable of an experience climbing up all these areas after the first hour or so, but that doesn't take away from the exploration and the puzzles and some of the levitating stuff. Again, you can levitate small objects and things to repair things, and they were all basic but good enough. but the climbing really was a bit confusing. There's also very few sneaking sections involving raptors. The first couple are really easy, and then it sort of throws you in the deep end and makes you do it yourself, and at this point it is really difficult. Like, there's only one part and you have to avoid these 2 raptors, and if they find you, it's game over. And I have to say, the raptors don't follow like a sort of set stealth mechanics. They don't have like a set trail, they don't have a set path, they just roam, and it is really difficult. Now, when I say difficult, I actually mean this one section in the game stops this game being a 1 out of 10 difficulty, because the rest of the game is there's no difficulty at all, and there's this one section which probably puts it up to a 4 or a 5 out of 10 difficulty, because it took me about an hour to do, and because it's so random it makes it really frustrating. So it was very odd, it felt out of place in the game, this stealth section, because of how difficult it was. On a whole, I really enjoyed the game. I found that the story it tells, I don't want to spoil it for you, is short and sweet, and it's a sort of story where you pick up objects and then it's sort of like you experience it through listening to audio logs and through listening to Higgs speak to you and telling you about what's going on. It's sort of that type of story, but it's really good, and it's quite engaging. Obviously it's a very immersive game, and like the T-Rex, it just adds so much. It's just like a little pet, you know. If you watch my videos, you know I've got a cute little Cocker Spaniel, and it just felt like that, following me around, fetching my stuff I throw for it, doing basic commands. It was just fun to mess around with, and there's a lot of miscellaneous stuff you can do in this game. You know, you can throw paper aeroplanes, you can play games with Leica, you can go fishing. Admittedly, they are all very basic and superficial, but there is stuff fun to be had. The game isn't long, I have to say, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in my trophy section, but there's a couple hours you can have extra just doing miscellaneous stuff and exploring. It's worth saying, you only go to, say, 4 or 5 different areas. You go to a farm, you go to a tar pit, you go to a jungle, and you go to like a planetarium, and then your base home area. So there's only really 5 levels. The levels are quite small, and they're all very linear, and that's obviously because I feel like it's a limitation of either the budgets of the time, and because VR you have to make so much detail in these small areas because you're only seeing it from first person really up close. That sort of limits it a little bit. I think it does well enough, because bear in mind this game is cheap now. I think I only paid something like £7 or £8 for it. I would not have been happy paying a £40 or £50 price tag when it came out in 2016. I think that's worth saying. But now, when you can pick it up really cheaply, it's definitely worth playing and worth the price now. Okay, so that brings me on to the trophy list. Now, what were my thoughts of the trophy list? Well, as I've said, this game is a walking sim. There's not a great difficulty here at all. All you've got to do for the trophy list is collect the Higgs units, which are scattered around in every one of the areas which I've already mentioned, and then the rest of the game is pretty much miscellaneous trophies. I finished the story. I think there's 2 ways to play the story. If you really wanted to bash through this trophy list, you could bash through it and get all of the collectibles in about 4 hours. I didn't do it that way. I took my time. I really enjoyed the story first time, and then I did a cleanup. So how long did it take me? It took me about 4.5 to 5 hours to do my first playthrough, which was just experiencing the game, getting the Higgs units, and scanning a few animals. That is the collectibles for the game, it's just scanning animals. It's really straightforward. There's only about 40 of them in the actual game, and it's worth mentioning, for a trophy hunter, the trophies are built really well. There's an in-game map tracking system which you can use. It tells you every single trophy on there and every single collectible, so it's really fun. Like, a lot of these cheaper games just sort of have 50 collectibles and then don't have any lists, so you don't know which ones you've got. But no, props to the Crytek for making this game and making the trophy list, and the way you track trophies, just so accessible for trophy hunters, really top quality. It made me happy when I saw it. So yeah, anyway, I played through the game about 5 hours and I did a cleanup, which took me about 2.5 hours. So this game took me about 7.5, 8 hours to platinum. There's not a great deal here. And after you've finished the collectibles, which again don't take long because the map's so small, and then once you find all the Higgs units, all you've got to do at that point is just do a load of miscellaneous trophies, have a load of fun, you know, throwing paper aeroplanes, shooting some basketballs, doing some tricks with Leica, dressing Leica up, and building some statues, building scarecrows. It's just really simple. It's fun, you know, it's typical stuff. It's really easy to mess around with. It's very common for VR, open world VR games to have that, and it's worth mentioning, although this game is linear, it's sort of open world. You can just go in any direction in whichever order you want. It really is sort of like that little small but open world type of game. Now, it's worth mentioning, however, I experienced a glitched trophy. Now, there's a trophy for doing all of the miscellaneous tasks, paper airplanes, blah blah. One of them is for making a seesaw with Leica and making her seesaw on it. Now, it's worth mentioning, if you're going to play this game, that you have to do this during the game. If you wait till the end of the game, it doesn't work. Now, I'm going to put some footage in now. Basically, you have to line this plank onto a tree trunk and it creates a seesaw. However, it just wouldn't work for me, and as you can see by the footage, I lined it almost perfectly. It wouldn't work. I did a bit of reading on the forums, and it turns out this is in fact a glitched trophy, so that was another issue for me, is I had to then play through the game again to do all the miscellaneous trophies. However, because you can do them all pretty much straight from the beginning, it only took me about an hour extra of play to do that. If I knew about it going forward, I would have just earned it during the playthrough. So it took me about 8.5 hours to finish this game, but if you are smart, if you've watched this video and you're going to go play it now, make sure you do the seesaw and all the miscellaneous trophies pretty much straight away. Okay guys, so that sort of just leaves me with the review score. What would I give this game out of 10, and why? Well, personally, I think I would give this game a 6 out of 10. I know it's pretty accepted that the average score for a game is a 7 out of 10, which doesn't make sense to me. I don't really agree with it. I think an average game to me is a 5 or a 6 out of 10. 7 is better than average to me, 8's great, 9 is amazing, 10 is near perfect. For me, it's 6. It does a lot of stuff well. It's just sort of that upper average mark for me. I just think it delivers a lot of stuff, but ultimately it's a really short game coming in. If you don't want to collect the trophies, especially if you just want to play the game once, after 5 hours you're basically done with the game. Now that to me isn't really value for a game. On top of that as well, I feel like the mechanics are really hindered because they didn't use move controllers, they used a controller instead, which meant you didn't have 2 free hands. And I can say now, playing games with motion controllers and playing with the controller as hands, it does break the immersion quite a lot. I probably would have given it a 7 out of 10 if it used move controllers instead of the PlayStation controller. For me, that is the biggest issue. As well, some of the mechanics to do with, such as the climbing, is very hit and miss, at times very glitchy, and I just felt like there was a lot of climbing. I know they did it to break up certain sections, but because it's a walking sim after all, but for me it was a bit too much. That being said, there's a lot of good stuff as well. For example, the story's pretty fun, the game looks beautiful, it is very immersive. I enjoyed scanning the animals, the collectibles were actually pretty fun, and Laika is just, she's awesome. Like playing with her, doing all the miscellaneous stuff, it's a bit of a sandbox, and for that it does create a lot of fun, and that's the key thing. I had fun with this game. I just felt like some of the mechanics, being really overly critical, were, even for 2016 VR, were a bit held back by either the developers' decisions. Everybody who has a VR should play this game, and that's the thing, I do recommend it. It's just the fact that it doesn't hold up compared to some other VR games, and it is a bit short. So finally, as I said, that just leaves as well the trophy review score, the difficulty score. So as I've said, you can platinum trophy this game in about 5 hours. If you want to relax and take your time, you can probably do it in about 8. And just bear in mind for that one glitched missable trophy. And finally, I give this game a difficulty of 4 out of 10, just purely because I said there's that one sneaking section with the raptors, which they just randomly roam, and there's no path that they follow. It can be quite confusing and frustrating, and because of that, it's not that straightforward. Without that one section, it would be a 1 out of 10, but no, it's got to be a 4 because of that section. That's all for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Turn on notifications bell to stay up to date with my content. I really appreciate it. If you want to have a conversation with me or with anybody else who subscribes to me, check out my Discord. We're always on there, we're always lively, having good chats and all that stuff. Are you going to play this game before the PlayStation 5 comes out? Bear in mind, when you get your PlayStation 5, you won't be able to play it on that console. It's one of the only games that is not going to be compatible with the PlayStation 5, so I'd recommend you playing it now before you forget, because it's an experience worth having. That's all for this one, guys. Take it easy.